The evening air carried a hint of jasmine as the sun began to set behind the Grand Plaza Hotel. Inside, the massive ballroom glittered with string lights that hung like stars above round tables draped in crisp white linens. Crystal glasses caught the light and threw tiny rainbows across the room, while fresh flower centerpieces added splashes of color to the elegant setting. Amid all this beauty, Lucia moved quietly between tables, nearly invisible in her black pants and white button-up shirt. The uniform was designed that way on purpose. Servers weren't meant to be seen just to make everything appear as if by magic. For 3 years now, she had perfected the art of being present without being noticed. "Remember, we're shadows tonight," Tina, the catering manager, had reminded the staff during their pre-event huddle. "This is the Richardson Patel wedding. 400 guests. Very high profile. Everything must be perfect." Lucia balanced a heavy tray of stuffed mushroom caps on her left hand while keeping her right hand free to serve. Her feet ached in the required black non-slip shoes, comfortable for safety but not for standing 8-hour shifts. Still, she had learned to ignore the discomfort. This job paid better than most, especially with tips from private events, and she needed every dollar. Music school wasn't cheap. Neither was rent in the city, nor the upkeep of her beloved but aging piano that had belonged to her grandmother. Catering had become her lifeline, flexible enough to work around her classes and rehearsals, with enough income to keep her dream alive for just a little longer. A woman in a floor-length blue gown waved Lucia over to her table. "These look divine," she said, helping herself to 2 mushrooms. Unlike many guests who treated servers as furniture, this woman made eye contact and smiled. "Thank you. My pleasure," Lucia replied with a small nod before moving to the next table. As she worked the room, Lucia couldn't help glancing occasionally toward the corner where a magnificent grand piano sat waiting. According to the event schedule taped up in the kitchen, a pianist would arrive at 7 to play during dinner service. The sight of the instrument made her fingers tingle, a physical response she couldn't control whenever she saw a piano. Those 88 keys called to her like old friends. 3 hours earlier, before guests had arrived, Lucia had been setting up tables when no one was looking. She'd stolen 30 seconds to sit at that same piano, not daring to play but just resting her fingers on the cool ivory. Even that brief touch had been enough to center her, to remind her why she worked these exhausting shifts. "Keep it moving, people," said Raj, another server, as he passed by with empty champagne flutes. "Dinner tables need water refills." Lucia snapped back to the present. She delivered the last few appetizers from her tray and headed back toward the kitchen, weaving expertly through clusters of well-dressed guests. The heavy doors swung open as she approached, releasing a burst of noise and steam into the elegant silence of the ballroom. The kitchen was organized chaos. Cooks called orders while prep staff chopped and plated. Dishwashers sprayed and stacked at dizzying speeds. Servers rushed in and out, some looking frazzled despite the evening being relatively smooth so far. "Lucia," called Chef Anthony from his position at the pass. "Table 12 needs the vegetarian option. Can you run it before it gets cold?" "On it," she replied, setting down her empty tray and grabbing the specially prepared plate. As she pushed back through the swinging doors, she caught a snippet of conversation between 2 guests. "Studied at Juilliard," a man in a tuxedo was saying. "Apparently quite talented." Lucia faltered for just a moment. Juilliard had been her dream once. She'd even been accepted 4 years ago. But the scholarship hadn't been enough. Even with loans, the numbers simply didn't work. Instead, she'd enrolled at the State University's music program. Still good, but not the same. Not the door opener that Juilliard would have been. She delivered the vegetarian plate with a professional smile and returned to her assigned section. The bride and groom were now making their rounds, stopping at each table to thank guests for coming. They looked happy if a bit overwhelmed. The bride's elaborate white dress shimmered as she moved, and her new husband kept his hand at the small of her back, steadying her when the voluminous skirt threatened her balance. Lucia had seen dozens of weddings during her time with the catering company. Some couples looked terrified, others seemed bored, and a few appeared genuinely joyful. This couple fell into the last category. There was something about the way they leaned into each other when they laughed that made her believe they might actually make it. Back in the kitchen, Tina was holding an impromptu staff meeting. "Listen up," she said, her voice tight with stress. "Dinner service starts in 30 minutes and we've got a situation. The pianist is stuck in traffic on the bridge. Accident backed up for miles. He called to say he's going to be at least 2 hours late. A collective groan went through the staff. Any disruption to the schedule meant more work for everyone. The wedding planner is telling the couple now, Tina continued. We need to adjust. Dinner will still start on time, but without music. It'll change the atmosphere, but there's nothing we can do. Something fluttered in Lucia's chest, a nervous butterfly of possibility. She thought of the beautiful piano sitting empty while people ate in awkward silence. She thought of her 12 years of classical training, her 3 recitals last year, and the standing ovation she'd received at her junior showcase. But she also thought of her job. Servers didn't perform. They remained in the background. Crossing that line might cost her this position, and she couldn't afford to lose it. Tina was already moving on to logistics when Lucia's mouth opened almost without her permission. I could play. The words hung in the air. Several heads turned toward her. What did you say? Tina asked, frowning. Lucia's heart hammered against her ribs, but she forced herself to stand straighter. I could play the piano. For dinner. Until the real pianist arrives. Tina's eyebrows shot up. You play piano? Yes, I'm a music major. Piano performance. Raj looked at her with new interest. I knew you were in school, but I didn't know you were a musician. Are you any good? Asked Tina bluntly. The question stung, but Lucia understood the concern. This was a high-profile event with a significant budget. Amateur hour wasn't an option. I am, she said simply. I've been playing since I was 5. I performed at the University Concert Hall and at the Downtown Arts Festival last summer. Tina studied her for a long moment. This isn't like singing in the shower, Lucia. These people paid a lot of money for a perfect evening. I know. You can come listen first before anyone else. If you don't think I'm good enough, I'll go back to serving. The catering manager checked her watch and sighed. We don't have many options. Let me talk to the wedding planner. She disappeared through the doors, leaving Lucia standing awkwardly as her colleagues stared. I didn't know, said one of the newer servers, a college-aged boy whose name Lucia couldn't remember. You never mentioned being a pianist. Lucia shrugged. It doesn't usually come up when we're discussing appetizer rotations. 5 minutes later, Tina returned with a slender woman clutching a tablet. This must be the wedding planner, dressed in a sleek black pantsuit that made her look like part of the catering staff, except for the designer heels and the frantic look in her eyes. This is Beth, the coordinator, Tina said. She wants to hear you play something. Lucia nodded, suddenly dry-mouthed. Now? Yes, now, Beth said, checking her own watch. We have 23 minutes until dinner service, and I need to either approve you or come up with Plan C. They led her out to the ballroom, which was temporarily empty as guests enjoyed pre-dinner cocktails in the adjacent lounge. The piano waited, lid already raised. Lucia approached it with reverence, running her fingers lightly over the brand name, Steinway & Sons. This instrument probably cost more than she would make in 5 years. Go ahead, Beth prompted. Lucia sat down, adjusting the bench height. She closed her eyes briefly, considering what to play. Something classical but recognizable, something that would suit the elegant atmosphere but not be too stuffy. She began with Debussy's Clair de Lune. The gentle notes floated upward, delicate as morning mist, but precise in their placement. She knew this piece so well she barely needed to think about the technical aspects, allowing her to focus on the emotional delivery. Under her hands, the piano sang of moonlight and quiet beauty. When she finished, she looked up to find both women staring at her. Beth's tablet was forgotten at her side. Well, Tina said after a moment, I guess you weren't exaggerating. Beth nodded slowly. Can you play for 2 hours? Appropriate dinner music? Yes, Lucia said, confidence growing. I have a large repertoire. Classical, some jazz standards, modern pieces arranged for piano. What about your serving duties? Tina asked. I've already finished my appetizer rotation. Sonia could cover my tables for dinner. Lucia named another server who often asked for extra shifts. Beth and Tina exchanged looks. It's better than no music, Beth said, and honestly, she's quite good. Fine, Tina agreed. But you're still on the clock as a server, Lucia. When the regular pianist arrives, you go back to work immediately. Understood? Lucia nodded, trying to contain the bubble of excitement rising in her chest. Understood. I'll announce you as a last-minute replacement. What's your full name? Beth asked, tapping on her tablet. Lucia Reyes. All right, Miss Reyes, dinner service begins in 18 minutes. Be ready. As they walked away, Lucia remained at the piano, her server's uniform suddenly feeling like something else entirely. A costume she'd been wearing while waiting for a chance like this. She ran through mental playlists, planning which pieces would work best for the evening. For 3 years, she had balanced trays and poured wine and disappeared into the background of other people's celebrations. Tonight, for a little while at least, she would step into the light. Lucia smoothed her black pants and took a deep breath. Through the double doors, she could hear the gentle hum of 400 guests returning to the ballroom for dinner. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear of playing, but from the unexpected opportunity. 3 minutes until she would begin. Beth, the wedding planner, rushed past with her ever-present tablet. "Ready?" she asked without slowing down. "Ready," Lucia confirmed, though Beth was already halfway across the room, directing guests to their tables with practiced efficiency. The bride and groom entered to applause, taking their places at the head table beneath an archway of fresh flowers. They looked radiant, completely unaware of the behind-the-scenes crisis that had been narrowly averted. The bride's father followed close behind, preparing to give the first toast. Lucia watched as servers, her colleagues until 10 minutes ago, poured champagne at each table. Raj caught her eye and gave her a quick thumbs up. She smiled back, grateful for the encouragement. The microphone squeaked as the father of the bride tapped it. "Good evening, everyone," he began, his voice warm with emotion. "First, Anita and Dev want to thank you all for being here to celebrate their special day." As he continued his speech, Lucia slid quietly onto the piano bench, carefully adjusting her position. The Steinway felt different from her weathered upright at home, more responsive, with keys that seemed eager to sing at the lightest touch. "And now," the father concluded after several heartfelt minutes, "please enjoy your dinner while our pianist provides some beautiful music." Beth gave Lucia a small nod from across the room. This was it. Lucia placed her fingers on the keys and began with a gentle Bach piece, letting the notes flow like water. She kept her touch light, creating a pleasant backdrop rather than demanding attention. This was dinner music, after all, meant to enhance, not distract. As she played, she glanced around the room. Most guests were engaged in conversation, exactly as they should be. But a few heads had turned toward the piano, expressions curious. At one table near the front, an older woman wearing an elaborate hat leaned toward her companion and whispered something while looking directly at Lucia. The first course arrived, a delicate salad of spring greens with edible flowers. Lucia smoothly transitioned to Beethoven's Moonlight Sonata, her fingers finding the familiar patterns without conscious thought. 20 minutes had passed, and her initial nervousness had faded into a comfortable focus. From her position at the piano, she had a perfect view of the entire ballroom. She could see Tina directing servers with subtle hand signals, the flower girl yawning at the children's table, and the best man rehearsing what appeared to be his speech by muttering to himself. After 40 minutes, Lucia moved into more contemporary pieces, film scores and gentle arrangements of popular songs that fit the elegant atmosphere. She played 1,000 Years, watching with satisfaction as the bride's face lit up in recognition. Between pieces, she caught snippets of conversation from nearby tables. Not what I expected from catering staff. Wonder where they found her. Quite talented, actually, and the comments both pleased and stung. Yes, she was more than a server, but why did that surprise people? How many other talents remained hidden behind uniforms and job titles? The main course was being served, roasted salmon with truffle risotto, when Lucia noticed a disturbance near the kitchen. Beth was speaking urgently with Tina, both women gesturing with increasing animation. After a moment, Tina nodded sharply and disappeared through the swinging doors. Lucia continued playing, moving into a jazz standard that allowed for some improvisation, while she kept one eye on the unfolding situation. Soon Tina emerged from the kitchen and made her way directly to the piano. "The pianist called again," she said quietly, bending down near Lucia's ear while she played. "His car broke down completely. He's not coming at all." Lucia's fingers faltered briefly before she recovered. "What do you want me to do?" "Can you play for the rest of the night?" "The whole reception? There's dancing after dinner." Lucia blinked in surprise. "Dancing? I don't know if I—" "Beth is desperate," Tina cut in. "The DJ isn't scheduled until 10 and there's a 2-hour gap if you stop playing." "I'm not sure I know enough dance music," Lucia admitted, still playing softly. I'm classically trained. Tina looked pained. Anything is better than nothing. The bride's already upset about the original pianist. If we tell her there's no music for the first dance, Lucia thought quickly. She did know some waltzes and a few popular songs that could work for dancing if she simplified the arrangements. It wouldn't be ideal, but perhaps I'll give you a bonus, Tina added. And you can keep any tips from the request jar. Request jar? Beth's putting one on the piano. Her idea, not mine. A memory surfaced. Lucia playing at her cousin's birthday party last year, taking requests written on napkins, the joy of connecting with the audience through their favorite songs. Okay, she said finally. I'll do my best. Relief washed over Tina's face. Thank you. I owe you one. She straightened up and hurried back to the kitchen. Lucia took a deep breath and continued with her current piece, mind racing. She would need to mentally prepare a new set list, something suitable for the couple's first dance and subsequent guest dancing. She wished she had brought her sheet music binder, but she would have to rely on memory as dessert was served, a delicate lemon tart with raspberry. Coolest Beth approached with a small crystal bowl that she placed on the corner of the piano. For requests, she explained, setting a small stack of note cards and pens beside it. The bride loves the idea that guests can ask for special songs. I'll try to play what I can, Lucia said. But I don't know every song, especially without sheet music. Beth waved away her concern. Just do what's possible. They already think you're amazing. The bride's grandmother hasn't stopped talking about you, as if on cue. The elderly woman Lucia had noticed earlier, the one with the elaborate hat, approached the piano with careful steps, leaning on a carved wooden cane. Young lady, she said, her voice surprisingly strong. Do you know The Way You Look Tonight? Frank Sinatra? Lucia smiled. I do, ma'am. It was my late husband's favorite. We danced to it at our wedding 62 years ago. I'd be happy to play it for you, Lucia said, genuinely touched. After this piece. The woman beamed, patting Lucia's shoulder with a wrinkled hand before returning to her table. Within minutes of the request bowl's appearance, note cards began to accumulate. Lucia glanced at them between pieces. Some she knew, others she didn't. She sorted them into mental piles as she continued to play through the end of dinner service. By the time dessert plates were being cleared, the atmosphere had shifted. Guests were more relaxed, conversations louder, laughter more frequent. The father of the bride approached the microphone again. Ladies and gentlemen, if you would please clear the dance floor. Anita and Dev will now have their first dance as husband and wife. Lucia's heart jumped. This was it, the moment she'd been most nervous about. The couple had chosen All of Me by John Legend for their first dance, according to Beth's hasty instructions. Lucia had played it before, though never for such an important moment. As the couple moved to the center of the dance floor, Lucia began the introduction, her fingers finding the melody that had become so popular at weddings. She watched as Dev took Anita's hand, his expression a mixture of love and the universal male fear of messing up dance steps. The bride was radiant, her smile bright enough to light the room as she placed her hand on her new husband's shoulder. They began to move together, a bit stiffly at first, then with increasing confidence as Lucia played. Halfway through the song, Lucia risked adding some embellishments to the basic melody, little flourishes that made the piece her own. The couple didn't seem to notice, lost in their private moment, but others did. Phones appeared, recording the dance and incidentally her playing. As the song concluded, the room erupted in applause. The couple shared a kiss, and Dev raised their joined hands in a gesture of triumph that made everyone laugh. Now, announced the bride's father, I'd like to dance with my daughter. Lucia smoothly transitioned to Isn't She Lovely, watching as Anita and her father took to the floor. The man was clearly emotional, blinking rapidly as he led his daughter in a simple box step. When she laid her head on his shoulder, several guests dabbed at their eyes. After the father-daughter dance came the mother-son dance, then the invitation for all guests to join the dancing. This was the part Lucia had been most concerned about, but as she moved into a series of standards and waltzes, the dance floor filled with couples of all ages. The request bowl overflowed now. A tall man in a blue suit approached, note card in hand. Would you mind playing this next? He asked, extending the card. It's for the couple's grandparents. 70th anniversary next month. Lucia took the card, relieved to see a song she knew well. Of course. You're very talented, the man continued. Are you with the catering company? Yes, Lucia said, continuing to play with one hand. Usually I'm serving, not playing. His eyebrows rose. Really? You play like a professional. I'm a music student, she explained. Piano performance major? Interesting, he said, studying her more carefully. Very interesting. As he walked away, Lucia noticed him approach Beth, gesturing back toward the piano as they spoke. Beth looked surprised, then pleased, nodding vigorously at whatever he was saying. The request bowl continued to fill faster than Lucia could empty it. A group of children asked for Let It Go from Frozen. The groom's college friends requested an Elton John medley. The bride's sister wanted River Flows in You. 3 hours had passed since Lucia first sat at the piano. Her back ached and her fingers were beginning to tire, but the energy of the room kept her going. This was what she loved, connecting with people through music, seeing how the right song at the right moment could create joy or nostalgia or romance. When she finally took a short break, gulping water from a glass Beth had thoughtfully provided, Tina approached with a rare smile. You've saved the day, she said simply. The couple loves you. Beth's getting calls from her other clients asking if you're available for their events. Lucia blinked in surprise. Really? Really? Now get back to playing before the natives get restless, Tina said. But her tone was warm. DJ arrives in 40 minutes. You're almost there. As Lucia returned to the piano, she noticed the tall man in the blue suit watching her from across the room, a thoughtful expression on his face. Something about his interest made her nervous. But she pushed the feeling aside. She had requests to play, and a room full of happy people waiting for more music. The crystal request bowl overflowed with note cards, each representing someone's special memory or favorite song. Lucia's fingers moved across the keys with practiced precision, despite her growing fatigue. She had been playing nonstop for nearly 4 hours, far longer than any recital or practice session. A young girl, perhaps 7 or 8, approached the piano shyly. Unlike the adults who simply dropped their requests in the bowl, she stood watching Lucia play, eyes wide with wonder. Hi there, Lucia said between phrases of the current song, a Billy Joel classic that had several couples slow dancing. The girl twisted the fabric of her flower girl dress. Are you a real pianist? She asked. Lucia smiled. I am. But you're wearing the same clothes as the people who gave us food. That's because I usually serve food at parties like this. Playing the piano is my special talent. The girl considered this. I'm learning piano too. My teacher says I need to practice every day, but sometimes I don't want to. I understand, Lucia said, transitioning smoothly to the song's bridge section. When I was your age, I sometimes hid under my bed when it was practice time. The girl giggled. Really? Really? But then one day I played a song that made my grandmother cry because it was so beautiful. That's when I knew music was magic. Magic, the girl repeated, eyes growing even wider. Do you have a request? Lucia asked. The girl nodded. Can you play something from Encanto? My mom says it's too hard for me to learn yet, Lucia winked. I think I can manage that. What's your name? Penny. Well, Penny, this one's for you. Lucia finished the Billy Joel song with a flourish, then launched into Surface Pressure from the Disney movie. She had learned it for her little cousin's birthday party, and was pleased to see recognition dawn on Penny's face. The girl broke into a delighted smile and ran back to her table, tugging on her mother's sleeve and pointing excitedly toward the piano. The mother looked over, caught Lucia's eye, and mouthed thank you with a grateful smile. These small connections, the grandmother requesting her wedding song, the college friends swaying to Elton John, and now little Penny's delight, made the aching in Lucia's back and fingers worthwhile. This was why she had fallen in love with music in the first place, its power to reach across ages and backgrounds, to touch something universal in everyone. The tall man in the blue suit appeared again, this time with Beth, the wedding planner, beside him. They stood at a discreet distance watching as Lucia finished the Disney song. Sorry to interrupt, Beth said during a brief pause between songs. This is Mr. Chen. He'd like to speak with you when you take your next break. Lucia nodded, curiosity mingling with fatigue. The DJ arrives in about 20 minutes, right? I can talk then. Perfect, Beth said, then added in a whisper. He's the director of the Wellington Music Academy. Play your best until then. Lucia's heart skipped a beat. The Wellington Music Academy was one of the most prestigious music schools in the region. Not quite Juilliard, but highly respected, with excellent connections to symphonies and performance venues across the country. She straightened her posture and selected Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major for her next piece. If the director of Wellington was listening, she wanted to demonstrate her classical training, not just her ability to play pop songs and movie themes. As she played, she became aware of a small crowd gathering near the piano. The dance floor remained active, but several guests had moved closer, watching her hands with interest. Among them was the bride herself, who had kicked off her high heels and was standing barefoot, a champagne glass in hand. Lucia moved through the Chopin piece with growing confidence, allowing herself to play with more expression than she had all evening. This wasn't background music anymore, this was a performance. When she finished, there was actual applause from the gathered listeners. The bride approached, slightly unsteady but beaming. "You're amazing," she said, leaning against the piano. "The original guy canceling was the best thing that happened to our wedding." Lucia laughed. "I'm glad it worked out. Are you with the hotel usually? We need to leave a review." "I'm with the catering company, actually. Just filling in tonight." The bride's eyebrows shot up. "Seriously? You were serving appetizers earlier, weren't you?" "I remember you." "That's right. Well, you saved our wedding. My grandmother hasn't stopped talking about you. Says you're better than the pianist at her country club, and believe me, that's high praise." She placed a hand dramatically over her heart. "She's very particular." The groom appeared, sliding an arm around his new wife's waist. "There you are. Your dad's looking for you, something about a family photo." "Coming," she said, then turned back to Lucia. "Play something really good for when I throw the bouquet, okay? Something triumphant." "I will," Lucia promised, touched by the bride's enthusiasm. The next 15 minutes passed in a blur of requests and songs. Lucia's fingers were beginning to cramp, but she pushed through the discomfort. The Wellington director was still watching, engaged in conversation with various guests, but always keeping one eye on the piano. Finally, Beth approached with a young man trailing behind her, equipment cases in both hands. "The DJ's here," she said. "You can take your break now. Mr. Chen is waiting in the small sitting room off the main hallway." Lucia nodded, finishing her current piece with a gentle closing chord. As she stood, her legs wobbled slightly, stiff from sitting so long. Several guests near the piano applauded again, and someone called out, "Great job!" She made her way through the crowd, accepting compliments with nods and smiles. Her mind was already racing ahead to the conversation with Mr. Chen. What did he want? Had he just enjoyed her playing, or was there something more? The sitting room was a quiet oasis compared to the reception. Plush chairs surrounded a small coffee table, and landscape paintings adorned the walls. Mr. Chen stood when she entered, offering his hand. "Ms. Reyes, thank you for making time. I'm Richard Chen, director of the Wellington Music Academy." "Nice to meet you," Lucia said, hoping her handshake wasn't too clammy from nerves. "Beth mentioned who you are." He gestured to a chair. "Please sit. You must be exhausted after playing for so long." She sank gratefully into the cushioned seat. "It was unexpected, but I enjoyed it." "Your playing is quite impressive," he said, taking the chair opposite her, "particularly given the circumstances. Most pianists would struggle to perform for 4 hours straight with no preparation, especially switching between classical, contemporary, and requests." "Thank you. The wedding coordinator tells me you're a student." Lucia nodded. "At State University. Piano performance, junior year. Under Professor Williams." "Yes, and Professor Abernathy for theory." Mr. Chen nodded approvingly. "Both excellent teachers, though I'm surprised Williams hasn't pushed you toward more competitions. Your technique is certainly advanced enough." Lucia shifted uncomfortably. "There have been financial considerations. Competition fees, travel expenses, it adds up." "Ah, I see." His expression softened with understanding. "Hence the catering job." "Exactly. Music school isn't cheap, and neither is living in this city." Mr. Chen leaned back, studying her with thoughtful eyes. "Ms. Reyes, I'll be direct. Wellington hosts a summer program for exceptional pianists. 6 weeks of intensive study, master classes with visiting artists, and performance opportunities. The session starts in 3 weeks." Lucia's heart quickened. Wellington's summer program was well known, a potential gateway to connections and opportunities beyond what her current university could offer. "I'm familiar with it," she said carefully, We had a student withdraw yesterday. Family emergency. Their spot is now open. He paused. I'd like to offer it to you. For a moment, Lucia couldn't speak. This was the kind of opportunity she had dreamed about. The kind that seemed to happen to other people, not to servers who lived in tiny apartments and counted every dollar. That's incredibly generous, she finally managed. But the tuition? Mr. Chen held up a hand. The spot comes with a full scholarship. Room and board included. Lucia blinked rapidly, fighting sudden tears. Why me? You just happened to be at this wedding and heard me play. There must be dozens of pianists who auditioned formally. Sometimes the most interesting talents are found in unexpected places, he said with a small smile. And yes, many excellent pianists auditioned. But watching you tonight, your adaptability, your connection with the audience, your technical skill under pressure, those qualities can't be taught. They can only be developed through experience. I don't know what to say. Say yes, he replied simply. Then come to my office Monday morning to complete the paperwork. Classes begin the following week. Lucia's mind raced. 6 weeks away from work meant 6 weeks without income. Her rent, her bills, how would she manage? Yet turning down this opportunity would be madness. As if reading her thoughts, Mr. Chen added, the scholarship includes a modest stipend for participants. Not a fortune, but enough to cover basic expenses. Relief washed over her. Then yes. Absolutely yes. Mr. Chen smiled broadly for the first time. Excellent. I'll email you the details tonight. He handed her a business card. My direct contact information. If you have any questions over the weekend, don't hesitate to reach out. Just then, Beth poked her head into the room. Sorry to interrupt, but they're doing the bouquet toss in 5 minutes. The bride is asking for you specifically, Lucia. I should get back, Lucia said, standing. Mr. Chen rose as well. Of course. We'll have plenty of time to discuss details on Monday. He extended his hand again. Welcome to Wellington, Miss Reyes. Lucia shook his hand, still dazed by the sudden turn of events. Thank you for this chance. I won't let you down. As she followed Beth back to the reception, the weight of the moment sank in. Hours ago, she'd been an anonymous server carrying trays of appetizers. Now she was heading to Wellington, one of the most prestigious music academies in the country. The DJ had transformed the atmosphere in her absence. Colorful lights swept across the dance floor, and the volume had increased considerably. The crowd had loosened up, with even the older guests joining in as Uptown Funk played. Beth led her to the piano, which had been moved to create space for the bouquet toss. They want you to play a dramatic drum roll or something when she throws it, she explained over the music. The DJ will cut his sound for your cue. Lucia nodded, taking her place at the keyboard once more. The bride stood on a small platform, bouquet in hand. A crowd of single women gathered eagerly before her. The DJ lowered the music and spoke into his microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, it's the moment all the single ladies have been waiting for. Anita is ready to toss her bouquet, and our amazing pianist is going to give us some dramatic music for this critical moment. Lucia locked eyes with the bride, who gave her an excited nod. She launched into a playful, theatrical rendition of the wedding march, building tension with rising chords and a rolling bass line. The crowd counted down. 3, 2, 1. As the bouquet soared through the air, Lucia hit a triumphant chord, adding trills and flourishes as the flowers arced toward the waiting hands. A collective gasp rose as 2 women jumped for it simultaneously. Then laughter as a third, Tiny Penny's mother, unexpectedly caught it when it bounced off the other's fingertips. The DJ resumed his music, and the party continued. Lucia remained at the piano, playing occasionally when requested for special dances or moments, but mostly watching the celebration with new eyes. For the first time in years, the weight of constant financial worry had lifted slightly from her shoulders. She wasn't naive enough to think one summer program would solve everything, but it was a start, a foot in the door, a chance to be seen and heard by people who could open other doors. As the night wound down, Tina approached, looking more relaxed than Lucia had ever seen her. Well, she said, leaning against the piano, I hear congratulations are in order. Beth told me about Wellington. News travels fast, Lucia said with a tired smile. In the event world, lightning fast. Tina's usual briskness had softened. You did good tonight, kid. Really good. From Tina, this was high praise indeed. Thanks for giving me the chance, Lucia said sincerely. Sometimes you have to make your own chances, Tina replied. Remember that. As the last guests began to leave, Lucia played a final gentle piece, Debussy again, bringing the evening full circle. Her journey was just beginning, but tonight had shown her something important. Sometimes putting down one tray means picking up a whole new life. Monday morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the cracked blinds of Lucia's small apartment. She had barely slept, her mind racing between excitement and anxiety about her meeting at Wellington. Twice during the night she had gotten up to reread Mr. Chen's email, confirming this wasn't some elaborate dream. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate Tasha, who had left for her nursing shift before dawn. Good luck today. You're going to crush it. Lucia smiled at the message. Tasha had screamed with delight when Lucia shared her news yesterday, then immediately worried about how they would handle the rent while Lucia was away for 6 weeks. We'll figure it out, Lucia had assured her, with more confidence than she felt. Maybe my cousin can sublet my room for the summer. Now, standing before her closet, Lucia faced a new dilemma. What did one wear to sign scholarship papers at a prestigious music academy? She had plenty of black pants and white shirts for catering, and comfortable leggings for classes, but nothing that said serious pianist deserving of this opportunity. After trying on nearly everything she owned, she settled on a simple navy blue dress she'd bought for her sophomore recital, paired with her one good cardigan. Professional but not pretentious. The Wellington Music Academy occupied a renovated historic building downtown, its red brick exterior and tall windows exuding quiet dignity. Lucia arrived 30 minutes early, heart pounding as she climbed the wide stone steps. The lobby featured dark wood paneling and black and white photographs of famous musicians who had either taught at or graduated from Wellington. Lucia recognized most of them from her music history classes, legendary pianists, conductors, and composers whose achievements seemed impossibly distant from her own life of classes. Practice rooms and catering shifts, can I help you? Asked the receptionist, a gray-haired woman with kind eyes behind stylish glasses. I'm Lucia Reyes. I have an appointment with Mr. Chen at 10. Ah, yes. Richard mentioned you would be coming. The woman smiled warmly. I'm Nancy. I've been running this place for 27 years, so if you ever need anything, I'm your first stop. Thank you, Lucia said, touched by the friendly welcome. You can wait in there. Nancy pointed to a small sitting area. Richard is finishing up a phone call. Help yourself to coffee or water. The sitting area featured a baby grand piano in the corner. Lucia gravitated toward it automatically, not touching the keys but admiring the craftsmanship. It's a Yamaha, said a voice behind her. She turned to find Mr. Chen watching her with an amused expression. Not quite the Steinway from Saturday night, but we keep it perfectly tuned. It's beautiful, Lucia said. Would you like to try it? She hesitated. Now? Why not? The paperwork can wait 5 minutes. Lucia sat at the bench, adjusting it to her height. The keys felt different from both her home piano and the wedding Steinway, but that was part of being a pianist, adapting to different instruments. She chose Chopin again, but this time a livelier piece, his Minute Waltz. Her fingers danced across the keys, the joyful melody filling the lobby. As she played, she noticed several people pausing to listen, students carrying instrument cases, faculty members with coffee cups, a maintenance worker with a ladder. When she finished, there was a smattering of applause from her impromptu audience. Mr. Chen nodded approvingly. Excellent. Now shall we handle the boring administrative part? His office reflected his personality. Organized but not sterile, with framed music manuscripts on the walls instead of the typical diplomas and certificates. A large window overlooked a courtyard where students sat on benches, some reading, others practicing with small instruments. First, the formalities, Mr. Chen said, pushing a folder across his desk. Scholarship acceptance, program rules, schedule, housing information. Read everything before signing. Lucia took her time with each document, scarcely believing the words before her eyes. Full tuition, housing in the student apartments, a modest monthly stipend, access to practice rooms 24 hours a day, master classes with visiting artists whose names made her hands tremble with excitement. Any questions? Mr. Chen asked when she looked up. What will be expected of me? She asked. Beyond attending classes and practicing, I mean. He seemed pleased by the question. Good. You're thinking like a professional already. He leaned forward. You'll be expected to maintain the highest standards in your work, to collaborate respectfully with faculty and fellow students, to represent Wellington at 2 public performances during the program, and, he paused, to seriously consider applying for our full degree program when you complete your bachelor's degree. Lucia blinked. You want me to consider transferring here for graduate school? Precisely. This summer is an audition of sorts for both of us. You'll decide if Wellington is where you want to continue your education, and we'll determine if you're Wellington material long-term. The weight of the opportunity settled on her shoulders. This wasn't just a summer program. It was potentially a new direction for her entire career. I understand, she said, picking up the pen. After signing the paperwork, Mr. Chen gave her a tour of the facilities. Gleaming practice rooms with floor-to-ceiling windows, a recording studio with state-of-the-art equipment, a recital hall with acoustics so perfect that Lucia could hear Mr. Chen's whisper from the stage, while she stood at the back of the room, the way. Summer students move into housing this weekend, he explained as they walked. Classes begin Monday. Between now and then, I suggest you practice as much as possible and prepare at least 3 pieces for your faculty assessment. Faculty assessment? Just a formality. The faculty likes to evaluate each student's level at the beginning of the program to better tailor instruction. 3 pieces. Less than a week to prepare. Lucia mentally reviewed her repertoire, considering which selections would best showcase her abilities. One more thing, Mr. Chen said as they returned to the lobby. I'd like you to attend a small reception tomorrow evening. Just a few faculty members and donors. Normally we wouldn't include summer students, but there's someone I'd like you to meet. Of course, Lucia agreed, though the thought of mingling with Wellington donors made her stomach knot with nervousness. Excellent. Business casual attire. Nancy will email you the details. Back in her apartment that afternoon, Lucia called the catering company to explain her situation. To her surprise, Tina was supportive. Take the opportunity, she said firmly. A talent like yours doesn't belong in catering forever. Your job will be here if things don't work out. Next came the harder call to her parents in Arizona. They had always supported her music but worried about her financial stability. Her father answered on the 3rd ring. Wellington? He repeated after she explained. Isn't that the fancy school your teacher mentioned last year? The expensive one?
Yes, but I got a scholarship, Dad. Full tuition, housing, everything. A pause, then. That's wonderful, mija.
Your mother will be so proud. You're not worried? Her father sighed. We always worry. It's our job. But this sounds like an amazing chance. Just promise you'll still finish your degree. I promise. The next evening found Lucia standing outside a downtown restaurant in her navy dress, now paired with her roommate's borrowed blazer and her 1 pair of low heels. She checked her phone 10 minutes early. Taking a deep breath, she pushed open the door. The private dining room held about 20 people engaged in relaxed conversation. Mr. Chen spotted her immediately and waved her over to a small group. Lucia, welcome. Let me introduce you to some of our faculty. The next few minutes were a blur of names and handshakes. A renowned violin professor, the head of the theory department, a composer whose work Lucia had studied in her contemporary music class. And this, Mr. Chen said, guiding her toward an elderly man seated in a comfortable chair, is Dr. William Hargrove. The name hit Lucia like a physical force. Dr. Hargrove was a legendary pianist who had performed with major symphonies around the world before retiring from the concert stage a decade ago. His recordings of Rachmaninoff were considered definitive by critics and pianists alike. Dr. Hargrove, this is Lucia Reyes, the summer student I mentioned. The old man looked up at her with piercing blue eyes. The wedding pianist. Richard was quite impressed with you. It's an honor to meet you, sir, Lucia managed, trying to keep her voice steady. Your recording of Rachmaninoff's 3rd concerto changed how I think about music. A smile crinkled the corners of his eyes. That's very kind. Richard tells me you have considerable talent. I work hard, Lucia said, feeling the inadequacy of the words. The best ones always do. Dr. Hargrove gestured to the empty chair beside him. Sit, tell me about your background. For the next half hour, Lucia found herself engaged in the most meaningful musical conversation of her life. Dr. Hargrove asked about her training, her influences, her approach to different composers. He listened intently to her answers, occasionally nodding or offering a brief insight that displayed his deep understanding of the pianist's art. You know, he said as their conversation wound down, I'm teaching a masterclass during the summer program. Just 4 students. Richard has suggested you as one of them. Lucia's breath caught. A masterclass with Hargrove was an opportunity most graduate students would fight for. I'd be honored, she said, but I'm not sure I'm at that level yet. The old pianist studied her face. Humility is admirable, but don't underestimate yourself. False modesty serves no one, least of all the music. Before she could respond, Mr. Chen rejoined them. I see you two are getting along. She'll do for the master class, Dr. Hargrove said simply. Good ear, good mind, and she doesn't talk nonsense about feeling the music without understanding its architecture. Mr. Chen beamed. Excellent. Lucia, that's quite an endorsement. The rest of the evening passed in a pleasant haze. Lucia met donors who funded scholarships like hers, alumni who had gone on to impressive careers, and more faculty members who would be teaching during the summer program. Everyone was welcoming, treating her as a colleague rather than a student, a subtle but meaningful distinction. As she rode the bus home, her mind whirled with new possibilities. Just 3 days ago, she had been a server carrying trays of appetizers, worried about making rent. Now she was preparing for a summer at Wellington, had met her musical idol and was scheduled for his exclusive masterclass. She pulled out her phone and made a quick calculation. If she worked double shifts at the catering company for the rest of the week, she could build a small financial cushion before the program began. After that, the Wellington stipend would cover her share of the apartment rent, keeping Tasha from having to find a new roommate on short notice. Looking out the bus window at the city lights, Lucia allowed herself to feel something she hadn't experienced in years, genuine hope for her future. The path ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time, it seemed to lead somewhere beyond endless practice and catering shifts. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother. So proud of you, mi amor. Your abuela would have been too. Lucia smiled, remembering her grandmother's hands guiding hers on the keys of their old upright piano. This is how you tell stories without words, she used to say. Now Lucia had a new story to tell, one that had begun when she put down a tray of appetizers and sat at a wedding piano. She wasn't naive enough to think everything would be easy from here, but something fundamental had shifted. She was no longer just getting by. She was moving forward. 3 months had passed since that fateful wedding night. The summer program at Wellington was entering its final week, and Lucia sat alone in a practice room, the afternoon sun casting long shadows across the polished floor. Her fingers moved through the complex passages of Liszt's La Campanella, a piece she wouldn't have dared attempt before this summer. A soft knock interrupted her practice. She looked up to see Dr. Hargrove standing in the doorway, leaning slightly on his carved wooden cane. Don't stop on my account, he said. I was passing by and heard you playing. Lucia smiled but removed her hands from the keys. I'm still working through the middle section. The jumps are giving me trouble. The elderly pianist nodded. Liszt designed it that way deliberately. He enjoyed making things difficult. He entered the room and settled into a chair near the piano. You've made remarkable progress this summer. Thank you, Lucia said, genuinely touched. Dr. Hargrove rarely gave compliments without qualification. Have you given any thought to what comes next? He asked, after the program ends? Lucia sighed. Back to reality, I suppose. My senior year starts in 3 weeks, and I'll need to pick up shifts at the catering company again. Dr. Hargrove frowned. That would be a terrible waste. I still need to pay rent, Lucia said with a small shrug. Music school doesn't pay the bills. Perhaps not yet, he agreed. But there might be alternatives to carrying appetizer trays. Something in his tone made Lucia look at him more closely. What do you mean? Richard and I have been talking. We've been quite impressed with your development this summer. Your final recital piece is coming along nicely. The faculty assessment was unanimously positive. Lucia waited, hardly daring to hope. Wellington has a limited number of teaching assistantships available, Dr. Hargrove continued. They cover tuition and provide a modest stipend. Typically, they're reserved for graduate students, but exceptions can be made in exceptional cases. Her heart began to race. Are you saying? I'm saying that if you were to transfer to Wellington for your senior year, There would be a position waiting for you. You'd assist with undergraduate piano labs 12 hours a week. The pay isn't much, but it's better than catering and far more relevant to your career. Lucia sat in stunned silence. Transfer to Wellington? It was an opportunity beyond anything she had imagined possible just a few months ago. But my scholarship at State, she began, would be replaced by this assistantship, Dr. Hargrove finished for her, with the added benefit of studying at an institution better equipped to launch your performance career. This is a lot to take in, Lucia said truthfully. Dr. Hargrove nodded. Of course. You have until the end of the week to decide. Richard needs your answer before the semester begins. He rose from his chair with careful dignity. Whatever you choose, you have a bright future ahead, Lucia. I've taught hundreds of pianists over my career. The ones who succeed aren't always the most naturally talented. They're the ones who combine ability with determination and adaptability. After he left, Lucia remained at the piano, her fingers resting on the silent keys. Her mind raced with possibilities and concerns. Transferring would mean leaving behind her friends, her apartment with Tasha, the professors who had guided her for 3 years. State University had given her a solid foundation when Juilliard wasn't possible. Did loyalty matter in the music world? Yet Wellington offered resources and connections that State simply couldn't match. Just this summer, she had played for visiting conductors from major orchestras, collaborated with internationally acclaimed musicians, and received coaching from legends like Dr. Hargrove. That evening, Lucia called her parents to discuss the offer. It sounds amazing, Maija, her mother said after listening carefully. But what about finishing what you started? You always told us that was important. I know, Lucia sighed. I'm torn. Her father's voice joined the conversation. Your mother and I support whatever you decide. But ask yourself this. 10 years from now, which choice would you regret not making? His question stayed with her as she prepared for the summer program's final recital. Each student would perform one major work, with faculty, donors, and local music critics in attendance. Lucia had chosen Rachmaninoff's Prelude in G minor, challenging but within her capabilities, with enough drama to showcase her technical and expressive abilities. As she practiced late into the night, her thoughts kept returning to Dr. Hargrove's offer and her father's question. Which would she regret more? Staying at State to complete what she'd started or passing up Wellington's unique opportunity? The day of the recital arrived bright and clear. Lucia wore a simple black dress borrowed from another summer student. As she waited backstage, she felt strangely calm. The summer had transformed her, building not just her musical abilities but her confidence as well. Through a gap in the curtains, she could see the recital hall filling with people. Her heart jumped when she spotted a familiar face, Tina from the catering company, dressed in a formal pantsuit instead of her usual work clothes. Beside her sat Raj and several other colleagues. They had come to support her. In the front row, she recognized the bride and groom from the wedding, Anita and Dev, chatting animatedly with Mr. Chen. How had they known about the recital? The program listed performers alphabetically, and she was scheduled to play fourth among the 12 summer students. When it was her turn, Lucia walked onto the stage with measured steps, acknowledging the applause with a small bow. She adjusted the bench, centered herself, and placed her hands above the keys. For a moment, she was transported back to the wedding 3 months ago, nervous but determined, about to play for strangers who had no idea a server was taking the piano bench. How much had changed since then? She began the Rachmaninoff piece, her fingers finding the powerful opening chords. As she played, she poured everything into the music, her struggles, her hopes, the gratitude she felt for this unexpected path. The piece built to its thunderous climax, then softened into the reflective middle section before the final virtuosic display. When the last note faded, there was a moment of silence before the audience erupted in applause. Lucia rose, bowing deeply to acknowledge their response. As she straightened, she caught Dr. Hargrove's eye in the front row. The old pianist nodded once, a gesture of approval that meant more than any standing ovation. Backstage after the recital, Lucia was surprised by a small crowd waiting to congratulate her. Tina hugged her awkwardly, then stepped back with embarrassed dignity. "Knew you had it in you, kid," she said gruffly. "The catering company's going to miss you, but this is where you belong." Lucia smiled. "I haven't decided yet about transferring." "Please," Raj said, rolling his eyes. After that performance, you'd be crazy to go back to carrying trays. Anita and Dev appeared, the bride rushing forward to embrace Lucia. You were amazing, she gushed. Just like at our wedding, but even better. What are you doing here? Lucia asked, genuinely surprised. Dev grinned. Mr. Chen invited us. Said you were the star student of the summer program. We had to come see for ourselves. We've been telling everyone about you, Anita added. Our wedding pianist who turned out to be a musical genius. Lucia laughed. Hardly a genius. Don't sell yourself short, said a new voice. Mr. Chen approached, accompanied by a tall woman in an elegant suit. Lucia, I'd like you to meet Victoria Powell, artistic director of the City Symphony. Lucia's breath caught. The City Symphony was the professional orchestra in residence at the downtown concert hall, a respected regional ensemble that performed a full season of concerts each year. A pleasure, Ms. Powell said, extending her hand. Your Rachmaninoff was quite impressive. Thank you, Lucia managed, shaking the offered hand. We should talk, Ms. Powell continued. The symphony has an opening for a pianist in our community outreach program. Part-time, but it pays reasonably well, primarily educational concerts in schools, senior centers, community events, occasionally filling in for rehearsals with the main orchestra when needed. Lucia stared, certain she had misheard. You're offering me a job? Ms. Powell smiled. Richard speaks highly of you, and what I heard tonight confirms his judgment. We need someone versatile, with both classical training and the ability to connect with diverse audiences. Your experience at that wedding, playing everything from Bach to Disney on the fly suggests you have exactly the adaptability we're looking for. The position would work perfectly with your studies if you transfer to Wellington, Mr. Chen added pointedly. We could arrange your teaching assistant schedule around symphony commitments. Later that night, alone in her dormitory room, Lucia sat at the window looking out at the moonlit campus. Her decision was made. She would transfer to Wellington, accept the teaching assistantship, and take the symphony position. The path forward was suddenly clear, as if the final piece of a complex puzzle had fallen into place. She opened her laptop and composed an email to her state university professors, explaining her decision and expressing her gratitude for their guidance. They would understand. In the music world, opportunities like this couldn't be passed up. Next, she texted Tasha about the change in plans. Her roommate responded immediately. Go for it. I'm throwing you a goodbye party next weekend. No arguments. Finally, she called her parents to share her decision. We're so proud of you, her mother said, voice thick with emotion. Your grandmother always said you were meant for something special. 1 year later, Lucia stood in the wings of the city concert hall, waiting to make her debut as guest soloist with the symphony. She had performed dozens of outreach concerts, becoming a favorite with audiences who appreciated her ability to make classical music accessible without compromising its integrity. When the conductor had approached her about performing a concerto with the full orchestra, she had suggested Rachmaninoff's Second, the same composer whose recording by Dr. Hargrove had inspired her years ago. As she prepared to walk on stage, she thought about the winding path that had led her here. If she hadn't been working that particular wedding, if the original pianist hadn't canceled, if Mr. Chen hadn't been in attendance, any missing piece would have led to a completely different life. The concertmaster finished tuning the orchestra. The conductor looked toward the wings, nodding for her entrance. The audience applauded as Lucia walked confidently to the grand piano at center stage. Before sitting, she looked out at the filled concert hall. In the front row sat her parents, who had flown in for the performance. Beside them were Tasha, Tina, and several Wellington faculty members, including Dr. Hargrove, who had become a trusted mentor. Even Anita and Dev had returned, celebrating their first anniversary by attending her debut. As Lucia took her place at the piano, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Her journey had begun with a simple choice, putting down a serving tray to sit at a wedding piano. That moment of courage had changed everything. The conductor raised his baton. Lucia placed her hands above the keys, ready to bring Rachmaninoff's magnificent music to life. As the orchestra began the opening theme, she took a deep breath and prepared to join them. No longer a server moonlighting as a pianist, but an artist coming into her own.